This Pitch Breakfast video is brought to you by Spangler and Agins, attorneys for Charlotte's startup community.
My name is Candace Torian, and I'm the founder of NewbeeNetwork.com, which is a social way to relocate. Before I get started on talking about Newbee Network and what I love and what I do today, I wanted to give a little bit of background on my professional experience. I've worked in the capacity of CRM strategy and marketing systems integration for all of these brands, most recently Food Lion. I help support these brands in consolidating disparate systems with customer data into a single integrated system so that their marketing teams can leverage it for reporting and campaigns. My passion is grounded in customer data and customer engagement and the technology that harnesses it. So why am I here today? I'm here because over the last year and a half, I've made some pretty large bets. And all of those bets have started with this one question. And I bet any room that I stood in front of, 90% of that room would tell me that, yes, they have moved at least once in their life. So by a show of hands, how many of you have ever had to move? Perfect, I'm winning on that bet. Bet one. So we're not alone. Every year, 37 million people move within the US, whether it's within the same city, outside of the state, or outside of the country. And that represents 17 million households. And we all have something else in common. We all would probably say the process was pretty painful. And it's painful typically for two reasons. One, it's the logistical process of moving, managing a moving company, finding storage facilities, managing a moving checklist on Excel spreadsheets, Word documents, and if you're anything like me, on Post-it stickers. Then it's the other side of the coin, and that's the social impact it has, uprooting yourself from the familiar and creating new roots in an unfamiliar place. And God forbid, as an adult, you actually have to make a friend in this new town. So what's the solution? At NewbeeNetwork.com, we believe that we're the solution. Our mission is to take a very cumbersome logistical moving process and transform it into one that's fun, interactive, and community-oriented. So first, we handle the moving logistical piece by providing a piece of utility, several tools, in fact. A moving checklist that's pre-populated with tasks that you should do throughout your moving process, and it's also fully customizable. We also provide a budgetary tool, which is linked to our marketplace, and it allows you to update your budget as you're buying new furniture and decor for your home or apartment. Then we handle the social piece, which is really another huge bet we're making, and that's where we believe we bring the most value, and that's providing a platform, a community of other people who've made a similar move. So if you move from New York to Charlotte, that's a big difference, and you can get on this platform and search our Friend Finder page for someone else who made a similar move. That would be truly impactful for you. This is a place where you can start to build a community long before your move. And in fact, we're in beta. The Friend Finder page is our most popular page by far. People send Hive requests, and they're not even sure what a Hive is. Intuitively, they just know it's adding a friend to their network so they can begin a conversation. So how do we monetize this? So there's probably 4 big industries that came to mind, and that's moving. So think moving companies would definitely want access to this audience, storage facilities, things of that nature. Real estate, so think realtors want to support our customers in finding a home, or even rental properties if they're renting, which most of our users are. Retailers, that's where my bread and butter comes in, my professional experience comes in. Retailers are interested in you in 2 big events in your life: when you have a baby and when you move. That's when your brand loyalty is in flux. So think about Food Lion. They would be highly interested in engaging with you long before your move to welcome you to the neighborhood, and you become their new customer when you finally do move. Local government, that's far out into the future, but obviously they would be interested in augmenting the census data that they get every 10 years to get an understanding of trends going in and out of their local market. So here's a scenario from a lead gen perspective. I used to work for LendingTree. In fact, myself and only one developer created their entire CRM database, of which they use today. We're taking a lead gen approach as well. So here's an idea of what could be made from an average customer that exists on Newbee Network right now. Most of our customers have spent at least $5,000 on the move itself, and we have a moving company now we partnered with that gives us 10%. Holy crap. Okay, we have a moving company right now that gives us 10%, so that's 500. And then I'm working with Food Lion, who's going to do a Welcome to the Neighborhood campaign in Q2, and that would give us $60 per acquired customer. Today, it costs them $100 to get a customer through a moving campaign. And then rental leads are about $100. That's $60 per one of our actual leads today, times 5%. If we can capture 5% of the market that's moving out of state, and most of our users are moving out of state, and if 1 in 5 represents this, that's 19 million. And that's just touching the surface. I wish I had more time to talk a little bit more about it, but that's Newbie in a nutshell.
Well, I think it's well thought out. Good for you,
Thank
Candace.
you.
I'm sorry you didn't able to finish up like the first one. Ha ha ha. But anyhow, and I don't know since Mark, weren't you at Lending Tree too? Maybe
I never worked there, but spent a lot of time with Doug. So yeah.
Okay, so maybe you could comment. But having just moved myself in the last year, and that's just locally.
Yeah.
It is a challenge, and I feel like everything that was provided to me was by mail and paper and hard copy. I mean, I don't think there's a strong online platform. You get a lot of coupons from every damn retailer you can think of, and the real estate people give you this like brochure filled with a bunch of, I bet everything that they give you is what you've put online. How do you, I guess it's through your real estate and through the retailers that you're going to get your word out. I mean, marketing this is the biggest, I think, is the biggest.
So if you think about it, the members are a product, right? So the biggest challenge for us is getting users on the platform. Fortunately for me, I love to talk. In the last 3 months, I've talked so much, I've got featured in Black Enterprise, Forbes, and a few other publications. And in 3 months, I got 2,200 people to sign up. Now that's a long way from getting 5% of the market, but my hope is that while we're in beta, this momentum continues, and that's really how we're gonna draw a lot of our users. Then it's the strategic partnerships with moving companies, realtors, create these channel partners, kind of like what we did at Lending Tree, to push a lot of these leads to us.
Yeah, I would. I think I say this every time I'm on this panel. So it's either good advice or if it's not good advice, you can take it or leave it. But I would start where you ended. So like this is, I had this English teacher in college. I would always kind of ask me to rewrite the paper and be like, your thesis is your conclusion. Start over, right? I think you need to lead with, this is a lead gen business model. You spent all the time telling me about community, showing me a website. I was still kind of like, okay, where are we going here? So I know it's a general pitch, but I would say I've got a new approach on lead generation in and around the mover space. And like mover space is huge. I worked at Bank of America in digital. I'd never worked at Lending Tree, but spent some time helping Doug there, and Doug and I are co-founders in another startup. Like, you immediately get the word recognition on lead gen, and I think you should try to reform the concept of how the community adds value, right? That's probably your differentiator,
Yep,
I think.
it
Not
is.
to try to pull your whole business apart, but I think what you're saying is I've got a lead gen model in a hugely monetizable, rich space called movers. It's big. And my differentiator is community. Because everyone else is just kind of like, hey, come to my website.
Utility.
Come to my website. You need to switch your cable. You need to do that. And you're like, no. This is about humans, right? People, community. So I would maybe rebuild it with that structuring and reorder. And that just kind of, from an investor's point of view, if I'm thinking about how does this impact, how does the business model kind of impact the space, that might help. So that's more just feedback on your pitch. But in general, I think it's a cool concept. It's a crowded space. So you need to kind of hook me on why it's going to be different.
So to go back to your point about really honing in on the social piece being the differentiator, I think if I had done that, then you wouldn't perceive it as being a crowded space because there's really no one in that space. So I think that's a very good point.
There you go.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where I would go.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of value to that.
So good job on the presentation. I know you ran out of time, so then you probably have answers to these questions on the slides you didn't get to. But a couple of things. So it's interesting. We all have different connections with Doug, right? You should have. Lending Tree is probably one of the most successful startups that we've had in the Charlotte area. And if you spent time there doing that, I would have highlighted that a little more if I were you when you did your background. By the way, when I worked at Bank of America investing the bank's money, Doug told me to go away. He didn't want our money, which is kind of interesting. With that said, I do think one of the challenges here, this lead generation space and the moving thing, and it's interesting. I'm old enough to see these things sort of cycle back, if you will. So there are a lot of dead bodies out there from like 15 years ago that played in this space, right? And were trying to do the lead generation and failed. So if you were doing an investor pitch, you would definitely need to be aware of that and also position yourself. Like, where are you trying to play? I think the network. You're saying you're going to do this. Your differentiator is this network you're building. I think is both good and bad. It's good if you can pull it off and do a network play, right? It's the old Metcalfe's law, right, on the valuation of networks. If you can actually get a network play going, there's a lot of value. But I can tell you, as somebody who looked at LinkedIn like very, very early on, it took them several $100 million to build out the network before it really got moving. So, if I'm an investor, I'm sitting here looking at this. If I think that, the very first thing I think of is you're going to need tens of millions of dollars to pull this off. Right, and then I got, and you may have again had a slide coming up, but where are you playing, right? Because realtors, if you look at when people move here, if people are being relocated, right, and they're buying a home, then a lot of the services you were talking about, realtors perform kind of that function, right? Or if you're doing an apartment, it's one of the apartment finding companies that does that, a relocation company, and then there's Zillow. Right, is beginning to kind of get into that space. I would have loved to have seen a little bit more of a kind of like a magic quadrant type of thing. You're a techie, so you know what that is, right? Around what does the competitive landscape look like? And then finally, back to Mark's point, when you get down to, okay, I get what you're doing, your business model is around lead generation. And I absolutely hate, and most investors I think do, this, I'm going to get 5% of the market because everybody says it and nobody does it, right? And so when somebody pitches me, I'm going to get X percent of the market, my reaction is pretty much to shut down, right? I'd much rather see kind of a bottom up. Okay, I've tested this. I've spent this amount of money doing some kind of search engine stuff, and here are the results that I've gotten. So I know what my customer acquisition costs look like, or at least I've thought about it, right? And again, you were probably going to get to some of that, but those are my comments.
Yep.
One other thought I had, I just saw a pitch a couple weeks ago on a startup. It's kind of a similar, totally different space, but similar business model. It's a network play. Is they actually just kind of, the slide was like, here's a timeline. It was like, step one is like, here's me. Here's where I started. Here's my professional experience. Step two, I'm proving out this concept called social movers, whatever. Like, and you're like, step three is I'm launching this company with a beta product. It just kind of grounded pitch really well. And I'm not saying that's going to ground your pitch, but it's a technique I just saw someone pull off literally 2 weeks ago in front of me. I was like, wow.
That's very cool.
Because walking into the pitch, it was such a big idea, like ed tech,
Wow.
exchange for teachers and students and public, and you're like, oh my gosh. And this is like one of those oh my gosh spaces. It's huge. It's like, here's where I'm at. Step one, step two, step three. I'm asking for funding. I need X, I know this wasn't the investors. I need X to launch, and here's where we are. And then step four is I'm trying to prove this with that money that I'm going to raise. What are you trying to prove? You're trying to prove that Food Lion wants to spend money? Are you trying to prove that you're a hybrid agency versus, website play? Like, that's where it gets really interesting. Versus, like, again, like I said earlier, like you stay in this abstracted space of like huge space, 5% market share, and you never get to hone in and like actually control a conversation with your audience. So.
Okay.
We've got time for
I like
one
that
from the
suggestion.
audience. Anybody have a question? Yes.
So my question is, the market research that you did to determine the most critical questions or problems that builders face, can you talk about that?
So we did a few focus groups locally in Raleigh, and we took the meetup group New in Town, And we worked with them to understand what were their pain points when they were moving into the Raleigh area. So it was very Raleigh specific. So from a data perspective, it's only statistically significant for someone moving to the Raleigh area, but that's how we got to our value pillar of, it was the social piece that caught me off guard rather than the actual logistics itself, especially with families.
You could have highlighted that better,
I could so
because
see
that would have hooked me way better up front.
Okay.
You would have said, like, I did this focus group and this
Yeah.
caught me by surprise. So like,
Yeah.
show that you're learning along the way,
Okay.
right? That's really the entrepreneurial process, is like, you know, build, test, learn, optimize. That's what you're doing
Yep.
all the time. Versus in big company land, it's like 6 months, budgets, agile process, project managers, right? You know, you're
6 months, man, that's quick.
right. 6 years. I'm sorry, 6 years. Anyway.
Okay. That's it.